Hi, I'm Owen Canfield with the opinion page of the Oklahoman, joined as I am each Friday by Mike McNutt, the chief Capitol correspondent, to talk about the week that was at the legislature. And it was a busy week, Mike, for you and for Julie Bisbee out at the Capitol, covering a lot of interesting and I know time-consuming stories for you. One that was on our front page today that was sort of an interesting blow-up yesterday in the House dealt with the Flaming Lips. Residents voted to make a Flaming Lips song the official rock and roll song of Oklahoma. Supposed to be a slam dunk, kind of a procedural motion in the House, blah, blah, blah. Next thing you know, some conservative House members are worked up about a T-shirt that one of the Flaming Lips members wore at the legislature last month, and about their foul tongue. And so they essentially spiked this resolution that would make it the rock and roll song. Talk a little bit about that and where that stands now. The governor's going to step in and do that.
Yeah, the governor has issued an executive order, which is the same thing basically as a resolution. Instead of it coming from the legislature, this comes from the governor. And basically it just acknowledges that the Oklahoma History Center and some other folks put together, I guess it was the Film and Music Commission, put together this online poll. Right. And some folks have picked out 10 rock and roll songs, asking people which should be the Oklahoma official rock and roll song. And some people say there's two reasons that this is a mess. One, there's a state need of rock and roll. You know, you had that argument, you need a dinosaur, an egg, and all that. And then you ask people to do these things. You may not like what happens. And but regardless of all that, the folks did vote, and the Flaming Lips song not only was the most popular, it won 2-1 over the other 9 songs. Winner, so clear winner. And so the Senate, as you mentioned, in March, brought in Flaming Lips. They passed the resolution 46-0. They all became sponsors of it. And while the Flaming Lips were there, they went across the hall to the House chamber. And they were recognized in the House chamber, and they said a few words. And they had a reception afterwards in the House lounge where House members could come in, get their pictures taken, as they always do when they have celebrities, dignitaries come in. Not a word was spoken about.
No concern raised at that time.
And he had worn the T-shirt, he had a suit on, the jacket.
Suit jacket.
And then he had on this T-shirt, which had, if people hadn't seen it by now, had the stick-on hammer, which was a symbol of the Communist, is still the symbol of the Communist Party.
Right, sure.
And now, why the band member wore it, who knows? I mean, this has been going on since it's been rock and roll.
Well, there's not a dress code at the Capitol anyway.
Exactly. Band members are creative, and they sometimes are anti-conformist.
Of course. And
so a month and a half later, we have this House vote on a Senate resolution, which had been tied up for a couple weeks. I mean, yesterday was the deadline to get Senate-originated bills approved out of the House and vice versa. So we knew that was sitting out there. Why is this just holding up there? Well, it turned out a couple of representatives, including Mike Reynolds, put some tax proposals on an amendment on there. So it loaded it down, got bogged down. And so they worked through all that, and then it's the last item brought up at the close of business yesterday, about 2 o'clock, which is later than normal. The House members have been in session since 11 o'clock the night before. As a result, about 14 members left, because they normally get out about noon on Thursday. So they had only 80-some-odd members there. They had the resolution up, and then Representative Holland from Southeast Oklahoma says, hey, I didn't like the fact that one of the members wore this communist T-shirt. And then Representative Reynolds is upset about some comments that were made when they dedicated the alley in Oklahoma City for the Flaming Lips, and they didn't get the necessary 51 votes. All pieces of legislation have to have 51 votes. They got 48.
At the end of the day, the governor's going to take care of it. And from my perspective, just total silliness on the part of the House. I mean, the House finds ways left and right to make the state look awfully silly, and I think this is one of them. Spent way too much time on it, ended up doing the wrong thing in my view, and it's just nuts. So
because people had voted, it was a slam dunk, as you say. Yeah. And
we've got a $900 million hole in the budget, and these guys are worried about a T-shirt. It's nuts. Let's move on. Stem cells, huge issue this week. Stem cell research. A bill was sent to the governor that would criminalize research done with embryonic stem cells here in Oklahoma. And after much lobbying on both sides, the governor vetoed the bill, said bad bill, don't like it. And then the next day, yesterday, Thursday, an attempt to override that veto failed. Successful in the House, but not in the Senate. So as it stands now, the veto will hold. However, as you wrote about today, there will be other issues or other efforts, and most likely, to try to get the override taken care of. Is that right?
Right. The Senate has until the end of next year's session to...
Because a session actually lasts 2 years.
Right. And they can run an attempt on override several times a day, all the way to the end of this particular session, which is the end of May 2010. Now, the more they go out, obviously, the more you lose that emotion. And so we think there's going to be an attempt probably next week.
Right.
I think over the weekend, constituents, probably business members, chambers like we've seen before, healthcare officials will be calling the legislators. Mm-hmm. But a lot depends on who's there and what the attitude is of the Senate. And obviously, the Senate leadership isn't going to call for another override attempt if the votes aren't there, because that just makes them look weaker in the way of the governor. It's interesting that the governor, they barely had enough votes in the House, 68, to override it, and then at the end of the day, the governor overrides the Flaming Lips deal. So you don't know if some of the House members were still stinging from that. They were kind of hoping that they could override the veto, and they thought the Senate, which had 38 votes voting for the bill. But a lot of pressure put on the legislators the past couple of days, as you mentioned. So we'll have to see what happens next week. And probably by midweek, we'll get a pretty good idea if that's going to be another override attempt.
Speaking of next week, the governor may have the opportunity next week to vote yea or nay on a bill that would change who handles education testing in Oklahoma. A bill was passed that would remove it from the umbrella of the Department of Education and put it into a separate, newly created office. The backers of the bill, including many in the business community and others, think that it's the right move because the old, you don't want the chicken guarding the hen house, or the who do you not want? Fox. You do want chickens guarding hen houses, but no foxes, please. But anyway, they think it's the right idea to take it out from underneath the education department umbrella. Sandy Garrett thinks her office does just fine. Anyway, passed in the legislature. Governor will have it on his desk sometime next week, and it'll be interesting to see how that turns out.
Some Democratic members in the House say it's not creating a new agency. You're moving, like you said, this office already exists under the Education Department, and under the legislation, which won't take effect in July 2010 because there's a lot of things that have to be sorted out. Sure. It's going to be worked out in another bill, but they're using the same people, about 20 people, and they will have a different board composition that oversees this agency. But the question is, how is just changing this? The board people are going to be the same people. The people doing this, overseeing, are the same. If you want to change education test scores, maybe you should look at giving the school districts more money. This may just be cosmetic. And of course, some Democrats feel that this is just another attempt to weaken public schools in the state. Right. They feel Republicans want to really build up charter schools. Right. And the more you can weaken public education standing and take away some of its power over a course of a couple of years, you could probably make charter schools more popular than private schools, more, get vouchers back in. Sure. So there's a lot of concern about that.
Well, a lot of other things going on. There's puppy mill legislation that's getting reworked a little bit. English language, official language, common language, whatever, that's percolating still. Yeah. Randy Terrell has, the bill is not what he had hoped it would be, but that's an issue that will, I think, be resolved in the near future.
Yeah, the Senate did approve a compromise version of it, which, remember, there was a common English proposal and then the official English proposal. That's kind of merged. It all says basically official and common English will be the official and common language of Oklahoma. Still goes to vote of the people, although Representative Terrell was able to get his bill that would outlaw Spanish driver's license test out of the Senate. So that will come back to the House as well.
Right. Well, busy week for you, I know, in the House, and then for Julie in the Senate, and that'll continue here for the last month before they wrap things up late May, right?
Yeah, they still hope to get out May 22nd. Starting work on the budget, they feel they can get an agreement in about 2 weeks.
Good. Mike, thank you as always. We appreciate you watching today and encourage you to watch for more here on News OK and to read about these stories and others in the Oklahoman.